Welcome to Fitness and Finance with our hosts, Jeff and Jennifer. How are you guys doing today? Jeff, what's going on over there?
Hey, Tony, how are you? I love that you just are like, questioning how things are when we talk offline before we get started. So
Well, I think
I'm
our
still
listeners
laughing and
out there, our listeners and viewers want to see you, want to hear how it's
yeah.
going. And I really didn't get a chance. We talked about a lot of things, but you guys, I know you've been busy, right?
Slammed. Yep.
Yeah. And when you say slammed, that's not just watching your TV programs and daytime television, Jeff. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't even know what daytime there's television shows on daytime.
I don't know why I said that. I know you don't do that, but
Yeah.
what are you guys busy with?
Oh my gosh, what aren't we busy with? So doing this format, we're kind of combining some things in our uh businesses and
Hmm.
we're a build out has been underway for quite some time, and it's the typical stuff that takes forever.
It
Um,
does.
yeah, we have a lot on our plate right now, and definitely keeping up with our clients. And
Yeah,
there's been a flood of new people that want help as retirement is on everybody's mind right now in
sure.
DC. Between all the sort of the cuts and then the options to retire early, I'm getting a flood of new folks to work with, which is wonderful on one hand, but it's sometimes leaves little time for you know for fun like this.
Yeah, you guys are really busy. Yeah, we have fun each week on the podcast.
Oh, man.
I love doing the show with you guys, and we've got a lot of great topics coming up.
Mm,
And Jennifer's been coming up with a lot of the great topics, and
yes.
it's Jennifer Scherer and Jeff Smith. I should have
Yeah,
introduced you with full names. I always say Fitness and Finance with Jeff and Jennifer. I like the
yeah,
flow.
I like that.
J and J. It's the
Thank
J
you.
and J show. I like
Yeah.
that.
It
Or the
is.
JJ show. So Jennifer, how have you been? You're
I've been
busy as
great.
well with your fitness
Yeah.
clients, right?
So yeah, the new studio is definitely taking up a lot of time in planning, like fixtures and finishes, and
Mm,
how we're gonna have the display for the screens, and it's exciting. It's fun. But then on top of that, we're gonna have a renovation at our studio at Cowan coming up.
hmm.
So we have
Oh,
like
okay.
two big projects that are gonna be,
Really big projects.
yeah, renovating and renewing.
Hmm.
Wow.
And on top of that, we just became alerted that we are now a Medicare provider for dietitian
Isn't that
services.
incredible?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
Wow.
I'm gonna be working with a, credentialing agency to start the billing process on that.
Oh,
Mhm.
wow. Well,
Yeah,
that's good that you can
yeah.
help those people as well now. I think that's
Mhm.
great. We probably will have listeners and viewers out there that might fall into that camp. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's fascinating, and that's a whole other arena. And I know with your experience and Jeff, you've worked with a
Mhm.
lot of retirees and pre-retirees, and
Yes.
worked with folks with healthcare planning and Medicare planning. So it
Mhm.
really does fitness and finance tie so well together,
Yeah.
I know.
and you've come up with another great topic that
Mhm.
really tie them together and that are tied together. And you wanted to call the show Childhood Messages That Shape Your Relationship with
Mhm.
Food and Money. And I
Mhm.
think that's a great topic. We've all been there. We have so much we can talk about. Where do you want to begin? What is your what's the backing of this subject? I mean, what's the substance here? Why are we talking about this?
I feel like for me personally, I feel like a lot of my clients are still acting out old scripts. Um, you know, maybe you binge eat after being good all day, because food was always restricted or moralized as a kid.
Mm.
Mhm.
And
You talk about moralized. What does that mean?
yeah, well, that good and bad, right? That idea that when you eat good, you're morally being good.
Mm.
Or when you
Ah,
eat bad foods, like if you indulge in sweets, you're being bad.
you're a
And
bad person.
yeah, and so we
Yeah.
try to take the morality out of all that, but a lot of those thoughts are just cognitive distortions that we've never challenged. You just believe because you grew up learning from your parents what their relationship with food was,
Yeah.
and you kind of fall into those habits. So you have to ask yourself, is that true?
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
And I'm
are
not
are carbs bad for you? People will say, "Oh, I can only eat fruits and vegetables as carbs. I can't eat bread or pasta because that's bad." Like, that's not true.
right.
And so
Right.
you have to kind of you have to reparent yourself, really.
Hey,
Yeah.
Jennifer, you're on another level.
Yeah. You've kind of left Jeff and I are looking at each other
I
going,
know we're like,
yeah,
oh,
I don't, yeah, I'm out. I'm out.
Good.
You just let it's going to be pretty soon. It's going to be the Jennifer show,
it is. We're
and
just gonna be here.
there'll be 2 empty spaces. In
Yeah,
fact,
just
yeah, it'll
headsets on the
just 2
microphone.
headsets hanging on the empty microphones,
Man,
empty headsets hanging on the
I
mics.
mean, this is some awesome
Yeah,
stuff.
it
Really.
is good.
Yeah.
But and I want to point out before you guys jump full into this deep and do a deep dive, which you're so
Mhm.
good at doing on this topic. We're not necessarily saying you got to blame your parents for everything, but I know that my parents, they're great people. I love them dearly. They did so much for me. But when I look at finances and I
Right.
look at eating, I there were lessons that I should have learned that I didn't, and I learned some bad lessons too. We pick up these bad traits. And Jennifer, you gave an example, and I experienced this. I remember my one set of grandparents. You could not leave the table until you cleaned up your entire plate, not a crumb left, and drank a full glass of milk.
Yes.
And so, and my grandma was a generous cook, I mean, big piles of mashed potatoes and gravy, always meat, potatoes, and a
Nice.
vegetable and bread,
Right.
right? And a full glass of whole milk. And if I didn't finish it, I couldn't go out and play with the other kids. If they had
Right.
finished theirs and I'm sitting there, nope, you got to have you ever tried to drink a whole glass of whole milk? I
Mhm.
can't do it.
Yeah.
I love dairy, but that can be tough as a little kid too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
I
that what you're
feel like
talking about?
I feel like there's that mentality too where you're just disconnected from your hunger cues because you were taught to finish all the food. That's just in your brain. So no matter what portion you're served, you are going to finish what was on your plate.
Yeah. So how much of this though? I mean, yes, we start off that way, but at what point do we take responsibility for our own actions and our own health, right? I mean, I think that that's really where we got to, start honing in on is what are these habits that we're doing that are not bringing, us any favors, doing us any favors. And I found that, growing up where I didn't grow up on a farm like you two. I mean, you guys have that shared experience where there was access to really fresh food, and I lived in upstate New York where our growing season was pretty short. But from a financial standpoint, both sets of my grandparents were poor, and I mean, while they worked at jobs, they both had pensions, so they didn't have to save. They didn't really do, they didn't have to do anything, because between Social Security and a pension, and the standard of living in rural upstate New York is pretty low. They didn't really have to do anything, but they didn't really do anything fun either. You know what I mean? They weren't able to travel, they weren't able to do stuff. And then I watched my parents struggle and do this whole credit card thing where,
Mm.
it was an extension of income. And I watched that, and I swear that I do what I do because of those circumstances. I watched my grandmother, when she had a stroke, there was no money to put her in a home, as they say. So she lived with us in a hospital bed in our living room.
Mm.
And I can tell you the impact that has on somebody is pretty dramatic. Like I remember
Especially a
just,
child,
yeah,
a young person.
I
Yeah.
was 12 years old, right? And I'm
Mm.
watching, I'm bringing my friends home, and a once very dignified woman is sitting there very indignant. And I never wanted to be in that position. So exploring that post college, getting in this kind of career was, I have extra rocket fuel to make an impact on people so that they don't have to experience those things.
So
But
you use these experiences, maybe negative or the
Mhm,
lack of the proper guidance, to motivate you
mhm.
to be a better person
Yeah,
and change that. And so that's a
the cycle,
good
the
solution for our listeners
cycle.
out there. I don't like the part where you said, at what point do we have to take responsibility for our own actions?
Right.
You're not actually suggesting that I have to take responsibility
Yeah.
for eating an entire pizza at a time, and I can't
Through the
blame
morning.
my grandma for that. I mean, what are you saying?
Well, I'm just
That's
telling
just
you that
crazy.
while I took all the negative feelings towards finances and turned them to good, I did quite the opposite. I sat in the food thing. You know what I mean? I never wanted to leave that because we were rewarded with dessert. Like
Sure.
dessert was a thing
Yeah.
every night. It wasn't just Friday night or Saturday night. It
Oh
was
no, we all had
every
a
night.
full bowl of ice cream every night
Right.
before bed.
Same.
My parents
Yep.
did that up until the time they entered assisted
Yeah.
living.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that is a tough habit to break, with the idea that, like Jennifer said, you know, hey, I was good all day. I did everything on my list that I needed to check off.
Yeah.
It is time for me to have dessert. And that is the type of habits that we're really talking about today, right, Jen?
Yeah, I think you have to rewrite the script. I mean, those are, I was mentioning earlier before the show started, those are just called cognitive distortions. Like you just have to
Mm.
challenge old beliefs and ask yourself, is that true? Is eating a large amount of ice cream after dinner a true reward if it's not in alignment with your values, right? And you might value the ice cream more than you value your high cholesterol.
Hmm.
Wow, what
You
a
know,
statement.
or
Yeah.
you might ask yourself, wait a second, is this in alignment with my goal to reduce my cholesterol?
Right.
Maybe it's not. So,
Or be healthy and live longer for your children, or your
right,
grandkids, or your spouse.
right.
So what
Yeah.
how would someone stumble on this idea of challenging, though? How are some things that you can help people, like, because honestly, if I wasn't going to the doctor and when I was 300 pounds and the doctor said you got to get on cholesterol medication, like if that made me panic enough to do something. But
Right.
how you don't want to get to 300 pounds before
Mhm.
something like that happens, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think you do have to constantly evaluate your health, and that's what we talked about last week is that objective voice where you almost have to put the mirror up, right? Am I satisfied in my life right now?
Mm,
Physically? Am I satisfied in my life right now emotionally? Am I satisfied in my life right now spiritually, financially?
yeah.
There's so many different things that you need to evaluate regularly if you're on the path to self-improvement. Otherwise, it's a settling of sorts. You just kind of accept who you are and your
Yeah,
routines.
and how much impact does your partner have on the situation too, right? I
Huge,
mean,
yeah.
let's think about that. I mean, all the, in my career, I've dealt with people who are, one is a saver, one is a spender, and there's this constant turmoil always. I'm assuming most of those people had those childhood tendencies. Well, like what I found is that if people grew up in a situation where money wasn't as much of an issue, they tend to be overspenders. Conversely, people that didn't have much live in a lack mentality where they just want to hoard it and save it as much as possible. So it's an interesting thing, that we're talking about here, because so much of our actions and our behaviors are driven from our childhood, right? So everybody can relate to that. And when you look back, there are things that you either model because it was decent, or you try to get away from the tendencies that are negative. Like even when, as a parent, right, I realized these are things that my dad did that I never want to do to my kids, right? So I stayed away from that. So I mean, I think understanding and really reviewing what it was that you experienced in life it doesn't have to just be painful, right? It's just a look. Hey, this is what happened. We don't have to tie blame. This is what happened. How is this? How can I change this as a reality today?
How can we learn from these
Right,
things that
without
happen to us
crashing
as
into medicine.
children?
Right, exactly. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to be so negative.
Yeah, what about I just thought about my childhood, I had difficulty saying no to food when offered in social or family gathering situations.
Mm,
And for a long time, that was almost an expectation I put on myself. I have to accept food when offered. And it would be disrespectful to say, no,
yeah,
thank you.
you're exactly right.
But I think you need to really teach the next generation differently by promoting, intuitive eating and like trusting your own hunger. Like if you're not hungry, don't feel like you have to accept food, if you're
Mhm.
not really feeling the desire to eat the food. It's okay to say, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So anyway.
And so do you see, Jennifer, and when you meet with people, do you see it a lot where you can see, hey, something from their childhood may have led to this habit? I mean, what are some
Yes.
examples of that?
Oh, I see it all the time. One of them, I deal with a particular client that grew up with food insecurity. So
Mhm.
they weren't sure when the next meal was gonna be, right? And so
Oh,
now when that's still prevalent in when they have the opportunity to eat a nice meal, they just go for it because that was kind of
Mhm.
the routine as they would like overcompensate calories
yep.
when they would have the opportunity. And so now it's just rewiring in the brain, and it really does have to happen in the brain. I always say scan your body from the neck down when you're hungry. Are you physically hungry?
Wow.
Like,
Don't eat because of what's going on up here.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's great advice.
Yeah, so, yeah, just trying to work back in, like, feeling into her body
Yeah.
without the whole mental mind games that we play with ourselves.
Right. It's funny that story you just told, that example you gave. Um, I this is going to sound silly, and that's kind of why I'm telling you. But we have 3 cats. We got this kitten. My 2 daughters brought home this kitten from the Humane Society. This is what happens when I let my wife and 2 girls, when they're home alone for a weekend and I'm off on a business trip. I
Mhm.
come home and we have a new pet. Oh, we went to the Humane Society over the weekend on Saturday.
I'm sure
You
yours.
did? And they came back with a kitten who was born without his back left leg stops like right at the kind of elbow knee type back ankle joint, and there's no foot. So he was born a runt with 3 legs. He
Mhm.
does just fine, but we brought him home as a kitten, and if you put food in front of him, it's an audible sound, and it takes him, you could fill a bowl up. It's an audible sound, and it's like a machine. Hum, 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 hum. And this tiny little thing will eat as much as you put in front of him. I mean,
Yeah.
he'll eat it till it's gone, and you can't pull him away. He'll scramble to get back to it. And what happened was he was a runt of a litter, and he was left with nothing a lot. They told us this at the Humane Society. He had a hard time getting fed. And now anytime they fed him, he goes crazy, like food's flying. He's just chowing. And
Yeah.
like this is the only food I'm ever going to get in my
Interesting.
life. So
Mm.
I've got to go for it, and I've got to eat it quick
Mm.
Yeah.
before somebody else gets it.
So
And
that's
so
mm,
it's a great example of what you
so
said.
Yes.
it is. A scarcity mentality is also just as dangerous as overspending and overeating,
Yeah.
overindulging. I mean, it is, I think it's just so hard because everybody's a little messed up in some way, right? Especially from
Sure.
childhood. So dealing with that, I mean, we talked about this last week too. I mean, dealing with that stuff head on is the most brave thing you can do, right?
Yeah.
Really being introspective and saying, hey, does this make sense? And I think you almost need to have somebody like Jennifer on the food side and somebody like me on the financial side as a barometer of what is this normal, right? Because something normal to you might not be normal to somebody else
The
that
majority of the people out there
right,
might not be.
right, right. And you don't always have to be following the crowd, right? You don't always have to follow the herd, so to speak. But understanding, a professional standpoint of what is a standard, what is a proper, because some people might think it's just okay to gamble away 10, 15, $20,000 a year. I mean, I don't know.
Mhm.
I've seen that.
Mhm.
And that may be a standard for them. It certainly would not be for me. I don't even gamble, right? So, but that's my personal you know decision. So
Yeah.
other, so money's a little different than food, right? In the respect that you can do, it can be a tool or it can be something that you use to control, and choices, your personal beliefs and choices really drive how you spend that, or you save it, right? So food is a reward, and food is fuel. It's so many different things to different people. So
Yeah.
understanding all the complexities of your behavior is, an integral part to changing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and those messages that we were fed as children, I mean, I know a lot of my clients have said they got the message from their parents that, here, have a cookie, don't cry. So
yeah.
now, or I have another client, like
I got
anytime
that.
there was sadness or grief, they went to the drive-through.
Yep.
Right? So now when there's a sad feeling, guess where they want to go?
Mm.
They want to go to the drive-through.
Yeah.
So
I
that
can see
sets up
that.
those, emotional eating patterns. Or like I have another person that said that's ingrained, always eat dessert after the meal because that was their family routine.
Right.
Yep. That was our family routine.
Mine too.
It was just you did it. And
Yeah. You
now
always had dessert.
yeah.
Mhm.
So again, it's just ritualistic almost. These things that get ingrained at such a young age.
Mhm.
It leads to a lot of times forced eating, especially if someone says to you, you can't leave the table until you finish everything.
Yep. I had grandma like that.
Yeah.
Grandparents both. Yeah.
Right. And now
So-
there's a power struggle.
Mhm.
So it's just this whole dynamic that's in your
Well,
brain.
what about the idea of wasteful? One of the things that you taught me more than anything was you don't waste anything. Now, this is what happens at our house, Tony. So
Okay. I want to hear this.
I'll make dinner, right?
Yeah.
And then, when we finished eating, Jennifer always has a little bit left over for sure.
On her
Always,
plate.
always on her plate. There's
On her
always-
plate. So she
Mine's
took
like-
more than she could eat.
Well, I mean, we measure it, right? We always, I mean, so we know.
Oh, you measure out what you put
Gosh.
on the plate.
I mean, within,
Wow. That's good.
Jeff
Never-
is an amazing cook and he does the plating.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I played it for her. I
Okay.
know how much she's gonna eat, but I always measure out what she,
You feel she
portion-
should eat. See,
Yeah.
we're already getting into parental mistakes.
I know this
love
is
that.
crazy.
What the portion?
So what was your point?
Portion.
So
I feel so
she has
exposed right now.
so she has stuff left on her
So
plate.
she always leaves it over. Now, I grew up with the idea that let's not skip it. Let's not do the dance here. I'm going to put this in a container. It's going to sit in the back of the refrigerator for maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. I'm going to open up and go, ugh, and then I'm going to throw it out. So
Yep.
at first, when we were first together, I just started throwing stuff out, and the look of fear and disgust and pure judgment, Tony,
Yeah.
was.
Oh, I know
mean,
the look.
Yeah,
I know
was
the
like-
look. We
I was
know
like,
the look from Jennifer.
oh
We've
my
all
gosh. I was like,
experienced that. You
I was
more
like-
than anyone, but
yeah,
even
I
I,
was-
as the co-host remotely,
that
know the
you're
look.
the kitten that you got. It was like I kicked that kitten. And then she was like, what are you doing? And
wasting
I was
food.
like, I'm skipping a step because we're gonna Tony, I'm here to tell you I'm wrong as the day is long. I mean, if I put that in the refrigerator, the next day she's like, where's that leftover? I want that leftover. And she takes it to work.
Yeah.
Because that's
So-
what happens. What happens in our house is if we have leftovers, unless it's pizza, it sits in that fridge, gets shut. It first it's at front where we could see it, and then it
Yes.
slowly moves back, and all of a
See?
sudden it's out of sight.
Yep.
And then every couple of weeks you clean out the fridge, and you're like, oh,
Exactly.
what is that
Yeah.
in the back?
Yeah.
Yeah,
How did that last this long?
yeah.
So see, that's normal.
So she actually eats all her food
Yes.
and will eat leftovers.
Oh,
she will
yeah.
eat leftovers, and that's what
That
I'm
is
saying, that's
something
not
you found.
normal.
Again, you found a winner, Jeff. She's a
Please,
keeper.
Come
Yeah,
on.
come on.
I mean,
That's great. Because
holy
that would not
jeez.
happen in our house. I'll tell you that.
Well, all I have to say to that is, holy jeez. You know what? We need to get that as a sound on the soundboard.
Holy jeepers.
Yo,
Holy jeez.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll find that.
Yeah.
I'll find
If
that.
anybody doesn't know the story, it's because one day I was just saying, this happens an awful lot when you have somebody as beautiful as Jen. It happens when we walk down the street, just walking down the street.
Sure.
Guys don't even see that I'm even there. You know what I mean? They just
Oh,
stare
no.
at me.
You're
And
invisible.
I'm like, hey, how you doing? You know what I mean? Like, I just friendly reminder, I'm the husband.
I'm
you know?
right here. Yeah.
But one time I was at this office, and Jennifer was going to meet me there, and I was there with a guy who was sitting across from me, and I knew immediately when she walked in because he looked up and he looks at me and goes, "Holy jeez, you should see this one." And I go, I know that's Jennifer.
That's
and then I go, hey, that's my fiance at the time. He's like, it was so awkward. But and she eats leftovers.
yeah. But Jennifer, I know how you feel. I get the same thing. I mean,
Exactly. Your wife is
I mean, this doesn't just happen. I mean, people look at me, and again, I've said this before. People look at me and they say, "Tony, how do you do it?" And I just say two words: diet and exercise. Why does everyone laugh when I say? You guys always laugh when I say that. I don't understand.
It was the jacket. I thought it was the jacket.
It's the jacket. It's the jacket. No, but that's a funny story. And of course, you're both not only great in your fields and wonderful people and knowledgeable, so you're the brains of the operation, but you're both beautiful too. Usually on most podcasts that I've co-hosted in the past, I always know I'm there for the eye candy. I'm not the brains. I'm the eye candy, but in this show, you two bring it. You're the brains and the eye candy, and often little tear runs down because I'm wondering, what is Tony here for? What am I bringing to the show? But no, it is amazing. And so when I was a kid, I think one thing I want to make sure we touch on before we go today, because it's a pet peeve of mine. So I want both of you to weigh in on this. Jennifer, you can do it a bit with the food. I'm used to talking about this, and I've told this to other people before, but my childhood, I love my mom and dad, and they are the most wonderful people, but where I'm really upset with them is teaching me about money. And teaching me about respecting money. They actually ate pretty good. Besides the bowl of ice cream every night, I had farm fresh vegetables because I grew up on a farm. My eating problems, I'm not going to put any of that on my parents, possibly my grandparents, and most of it's right here on these huge, broad shoulders. But when it comes to money, it is definitely my parents. I did not see them necessarily handle money right, and they would never talk to me about money. It's just I'm half English, half Irish. We don't talk about things like emotions or money.
Exist.
Yeah. I think I got the L word out of my mom and dad when I hit 30. I think I was 30. It's like, oh, they do love me. No. And I remember my cousin. I have to go here because my cousin, unfortunately, he passed of cancer, Mike Smith, but great kid. But his dad passed, and I helped him through that time because we were like brothers. We lived close, and I'm an only child, and he didn't have any brothers. So we grew up together like brothers. And when his dad passed, his dad was a tough guy, didn't say much. And he's like, he never really told me he loved me. And I go, Mike, your dad loved you so much. And he doesn't have to say, I can tell, you can tell. He loved you. He cared about you. He did this and this for you. What about that time? Oh, yeah. So it's not necessarily about the words, it's the actions. And I know my parents love me very much. And it's not just material things, but they didn't teach me about how to handle finances and save and the importance of saving and compounding interest or investing. And my mom always said, the stock market's evil. It's gambling, grew up a strict conservative Baptist. And so, the stock market is just gambling, and we don't believe in gambling. We're Baptists. And I go, great. As soon as I could, I took that label and threw it away. Hey, guess what? I'm 18. I'm no longer a Baptist. Bad news, mom and dad. But seriously, I mean, there's good and bad to that too, but good. That is something I wasn't taught. I mean, like I said, my daughter started a Roth IRA when she was 21.
Right.
And that's because of things she's heard me say and my wife say. And she has finance classes now in college. In public school, they didn't teach any finance or personal finance class when I was there. For my kids, they offered it. All three of my kids were offered it either when they were a junior or as a senior, one personal finance class as an elective.
Wow.
And I believe that should be taught from 6th grade on. I've said this before on the show. I'll probably say it every week. I am such a firm believer that it's just as important as English and math,
I
and
do
it
too.
should be right up
Yeah.
there with it, and not as part of a math class. Finance shouldn't just be a subset of some math class.
For sure.
It should be personal finance,
Mhm.
and it should be taught from 6th, 7th, 8th, all the way up
Yep.
until you graduate.
Yep.
And parents should be teaching their kids about this too.
Well, a company from the Twin Cities, Allianz, a few years ago, we
Yep.
went to lobby for just that. We went there talking to anybody that would listen about mandating a countrywide financial literacy program.
Yes.
And I think it's vital in Virginia now. My daughter and son both went through a financial class, and it's called Wise. And my
Oh
daughter,
yeah,
my
I've heard of that.
daughter actually got an award. She's in a pretty elite class that aced the Wise test, right? So
Oh
she got
wow,
100% on it. Who
wow.
also has a Roth and a non-qualified
Uh-huh.
brokerage account.
And then they realized who her dad was and said,
Yeah.
"No, you're cheating.
Yeah,
That's cheating.
that's
Jeff Smith
they
is your
all said
wait, the wealth Smith, the insurance Smith, that's your dad?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
better
Well,
ace
I was
the
like, if
Wise
she doesn't get
test."
100, I'm gonna be like,
Yeah.
what did I do?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was what happened to me too, Tony. And I had to learn the hard way. And what I did learn from my
Me
dad.
too.
My dad was an entrepreneur, and he was he grew up poor as poor could be, but he was driven. And so I caught that from him. I
That's
caught
good.
that idea of building a business. Now his spending was terrible and his savings was worse. So there was a lot of those things that you're right. But what I learned is once I understood the value of the work that I was putting in, I never wanted to just, abuse that or
Waste it.
disrespect that, right?
Yeah.
And waste it. So I learned, as especially, I mean, I started in insurance, so I wasn't always a financial advisor from that perspective, but just being around that situation allowed me, the proper, steps like with a 401k and when I worked for companies. And I talked to stockbrokers when I was in my 20s, like, how does that work? What does that work? How do you, I mean, I would ask for people's free time, or even, I would like to pay for their time just to learn more
Sure.
about it,
Yeah.
because I didn't know enough. And that's what fueled me to become an advisor.
Sure.
And now, I mean, and Jennifer, I mean, such a businesswoman, such a tremendous businesswoman,
Yeah.
made good choices. Now her dad taught her a ton of lessons in that realm. I think that were valuable, right?
Yeah, with finances and business, right?
Mhm.
Oh yeah, my grandma and grandpa owned their own dumpster company, trash and refuse company,
Mhm.
and then my dad started his own company, website design. And so in college, I thought I was doing the pre-med route and decided that I didn't want to go pay for another 4 years of school. So I thought
Yeah,
I'm going to become a
smart.
personal trainer and I'm going to start earning some money, doing that at a gym, and just fell in love with the whole idea of being able to have my own business like my grandparents and my father.
Smart.
So I remember calling him and saying, "Hey dad, I need your help building a website." And he said, "Well, what do you want to, you have to start a business. You can't just build a website. You need to figure out what the name of your business." And so I was like, "Well, just Fredericksburg Fitness." And he reserved the domain name, and I went downtown and I reserved the business name. And I remember just, he was kind of, I aspired to kind of follow in that
But wait, I mean, I think you're
entrepreneurship.
missing an important fact. That was on St. Patrick's Day, right?
That was on St. Patrick's.
So while
Ah,
everybody in college was knee deep in a keg,
Yeah.
2008,
2008, my senior year.
this girl is
senior
like
year of college
Senior
filing
year
for
of college.
an
I'm
LLC
filing.
on St. Patrick's Day,
on St. Patrick's Day.
and you're talking about what you need to do to start your own business.
Yep.
And it wasn't with slurred speech at
And everybody else is drinking
a
green
pub,
beer.
at a pub drinking a glass of green beer with
Yeah. Yeah.
food
Just think
coloring.
of that greenbacks.
Yeah.
She's like,
Yeah. We've run out of Guinness.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, before we go,
Mhm.
I wanted to have the same question from you. We're a little over time right now, but I really want you to tell me on the financial side, I was upset. I didn't learn good lessons from my parents, and I think it should be in schools. What about health and fitness and food? So fitness and food, do you think the education is happening in homes with parents, and is it happening properly in schools or no?
I don't think there's enough emphasis on it, honestly. I mean, physical education is almost, part of like a sports team mentality because you have
Yeah.
a schedule and that kind of thing.
It's kind of a joke when it's just, we're going to go out and play Foursquare
Yeah.
this period, and that's phys ed. It is
Yeah.
getting outside, it's moving
Yeah.
around, but that's all it ever was, at least in my opinion.
But a lot of times when I sit down with a client and I show them the way a plate should look, their eyes get double in size. It's like, and I'm like, this needs to be like ingrained. They almost at lunch, we need to like start really thinking about at school lunches, like showing children what their plate should look like.
Portion control and the
Yes.
variety of foods.
Yes,
Different
exactly.
colors of
Yes.
foods.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And just
And that's
half
just not just Skittles. When I talk about different colors of foods, isn't that something that's true though? I mean, you should be eating orange vegetables, green vegetables.
yeah. And
brown.
I always tell my clients, especially this time of year, try to eat what's in season.
Yeah.
With the farmers markets being open now, it's a
Yeah.
great time to get fresh.
It is pepperoni pizza season, so I'm excited. Sorry, Jennifer. Completely derailing.
He's
Jennifer's
like,
got everybody. I'm getting them on the right track. I'm getting them. Here comes Tony. Nope.
Tony's like,
The train. I'm there switching the track to detour it right into a pizza buffet.
Yeah, Tony's like, do they have a meat lovers and a veggie pizza combined?
But you're right. I didn't mean to interrupt, Jennifer, but
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, portion size, I think people's eyes get wide because they see the kinds of food and the portions, right?
Mhm. Well, yeah, and when I tell them a half a cup of cooked grain is a serving size, or one slice of bread is a serving size, they typically.
What's the man size though?
Well,
Yeah.
and again, that's a serving size. Now, some people need
Yeah, that
6
serving
servings.
size, that's not for a real man like Jeff, Jeff's with Jeff's metabolism, right? That's
Yeah.
what about a foot-long hoagie bun or sub sandwich bun? Is that a
Spread it
serving
out
size
over-
of bread?
Spread it out over the course of many hours
Yeah.
and practice intuitive eating.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Good. That's good. See right there. Hot tip, kids.
Yes.
Intuitive
That's right.
eating. Spread it out over the course. Don't sit down and eat a foot-long sub.
Worth
Exactly.
the price of admission. That tip.
Well,
Yep.
and then wasting food in your body is like by overeating is no different than throwing it away in the trash.
Good
Mm.
point.
Interesting.
Wow. That's another hot take.
Guess so.
It's
Yeah.
like filling up your gas tank and letting the gas just fill out over the, beyond full.
That's a great analogy. So you're sitting there, the gas tank's full, but you leave it, you're
Keep
just
on
keep going.
squeezing the handle, it's
all
just
over.
running all over. People are running from the
Like,
gas station out toward you. There's
probably a
sirens
cigarette
going
hanging out
off.
of your mouth.
You gotta say, that hot ash is about to
Yeah,
drop.
it's just
People are either running toward you or away
Food
from
for
you at
thought.
full
Next
speed.
time you overeat, just think about that gas
I'm
tank.
never
Wow,
gonna do that again.
that's a great analogy. Did you just come up with that?
I
or-
just thought of it because I'm thinking fuel. Well, I was thinking food is fuel, and that's
Yeah.
where my head just
Wow.
went to the gas tank.
Wow. Again, you and I are left in the dust. Jennifer just
no.
sprints past us.
Gosh, Tony.
I'm still doing a mic check over here. Test 1, 2. And
It's
Jennifer's just
It's on.
sprinting with ideas.
Yeah.
Whoosh. She goes on by
Man,
Oh, God.
incredible.
like a streak of lightning that gets
I'm
in your
like,
eye.
What if CAT really spelled dog? I think that's
You have a lot of great insight.
that was from
What's that from? You lost me.
Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh, man, I haven't seen that
Remember-
one in a while.
Booger was like they're all talking about like physics,
Uh-huh.
and they've been drinking and they're all laying and look at the stars, and he's like, I got one. He's like what if CAT really spelled dog?
I remember it now.
Uh,
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yep.
that's how I feel when she says stuff like that. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah. That's how you feel. She's making you feel a little inadequate, isn't she?
yeah.
No.
Do you know I'm the hockey player, you know what I mean?
Oh no, you're not a
Hockey player of the bunch.
If you're a hockey player, where's the flow? You take off that hat, we know you're not a hockey
Oh,
player.
that's right. I don't have
You have
hockey
to have the
hair.
flow. They call it a flow, the hair
Yes.
that goes down. It's really a giant mullet, but
It
they
is.
hockey
Absolutely.
players call it the flow.
I had one when I was their age.
Yeah, I live in the state of hockey.
I
I
know you
live
do.
in a state of hockey. Minnesota is the state of hockey. That's what
Sure
they call it.
is.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, great show. I
Yes.
love doing the show with you each week. And we're going to be gone for maybe a week, but we'll be
Yeah.
back with new shows soon.
Mhm.
And it's going to be great. It's
Yeah.
going to be awesome.
So good.
Thank you, Tony.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah.
That does it for another episode of Fitness and Finance with our hosts, Jeff Smith and Jennifer Scherer.